Let's do this.
Let's get ready to rumble! Welcome to Wednesday and Tuesday, the podcast for QSR operators who don't just show up on the weekends, they run the whole damn week. I am Hunter Charneski. I started as a late shift sandwich artist at Subway, one of David's stores actually. And in under 2 years, I was overseeing 16 stores as a regional manager. Now, I'm transitioning to the Taco Bell brand and bringing everything I've learned under and with David about leadership, culture, and turning chaos into performance. Speaking of, my co-host, David Taylor, he's a real one, true vet. Over 37 years in QSR and hospitality, including decades, particularly with the Subway brand. He's led through trends, turnarounds, tough markets, and he's still obsessed with getting the basics right.
Correct.
Together, we're bringing you real stories, blunt numbers, and field-proven leadership that actually works on the floor, not just on a spreadsheet. If you're serious about building teams, running lean, and leading from the front, you're in the right place. And hey, if you want to lead yourself with the same precision you use in-store, grab my book, The Way, How to Self-Sabotage into Self-Mastery. It's available at huntercharneski.com and Amazon. Last thing, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and send this to someone who runs their business like it matters, because it does. So we decided that we wanted to talk about a few things today, and I think the first thing, David, I'll let you kick it off, is what are we doing here?
So, I think the basics are the basics. Basics are important in any QSR restaurant, and I think the further along you get in the industry, and the further along you get in your career as a QSR, you forget the basics. You get bogged down in all of the nitty gritty stuff, or this P&L or that P&L, or this spreadsheet, that spreadsheet, and you forget the basics of the QSR industry.
Which are?
You forget one, it's passion, and to me the number one QSR is customer service. And I know that sounds trite. I know it sounds, we've heard that all before, but you can have the most successful brand, you can have the most successful P&L, but if you don't have that customer service mindset as first and foremost, your business is, you're going to have a death by 1,000 cuts.
That's one thing I've been mulling over a lot the past couple of days as I've gone into an entirely new concept. And so for those of you who are unaware, or not unaware isn't the right way to say it, but I'm in a really good company right now, and they have a really streamlined process with how they onboard their leaders in the business. And so I'm in a training store under a training manager for the next 8 weeks, and then I'll go to a transition store where I'm basically being supervised, but I'm very much so running the show. And then they'll look to place me, which I also want to talk about.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this concept of 3 C's. And if you want to work in the industry, there are 3 C's that you got to have at least one. You got to be obsessed with at least one of them. The 3 C's are customer, cleanliness, and cooking.
Oh, sure.
And if you're going to get in the door, if you are going to work in QSR, you've got to be obsessed with at least one of them.
Yeah.
If you want to stay in the QSR industry, you got to be obsessed with at least 2. And if you want to grow, you got to be obsessed with all 3. Because when you are obsessed with all 3, then there's a 4th C. And that becomes your career.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. That's the biggest. QSR is a phenomenal career. It is, and it's funny as I've heard people say, I can't wait to get out. I need to go get a real job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a real job with real money on the line.
Yep.
And I think the ability to progress in the QSR industry is phenomenal. Even if you go from, let's use Subway as an example, sandwich artist to sandwich artist to manager to multi-unit manager to district manager to senior district manager. Mm-hmm. The progression was quick.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of people that worked for me that have gone on in the QSR industry, not only just to, within a franchise, but also to the corporate side, but also have become franchisee owners in their own right.
So talk a little bit about that, though, in terms of you have this swath of experience in some of the people that you've seen come and go, and still tying into the basics with the customer?
So, customer service is important, and you can have the best sandwich artist that never would become a great manager.
Yeah, you've always said that. Yeah, keep going with that.
And you can have a medium sandwich artist that becomes a great manager, but it's customer service, but it's leadership. You know, there's not a lot of opportunity for sandwich artists to become leaders. You know, that are leaders, but you can see that trait in them. You can pick out that trait when they're working with a crew. Even if, you know, work as if even if you're 1 week into the job, 2 weeks into the job, work as if you are a leader, if you are the manager.
Mm-hmm.
You know, without disrespecting the manager or those kind of things, but work as if it's your store. Work as if you own that store.
Mm-hmm.
Treat the customers if they are your customers, as if you own that store.
How do you get people to care about the customer? If we're going to stick in that one of the first
Well,
three
that's great.
C's.
That's great. So I think it's all about how the leaders, management, owners, district managers, senior district managers. I mean, I've been talking a lot about this. Is about how you treat the people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always said, as a franchisee, the most important person to me in the store is my manager. It's not the customer. It's my manager.
Mm.
To the manager, the most important person in the store should be their sandwich artist, their employee.
Mm-hmm.
And to the employee, the most important person in the store is the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I guess to use an economic term, it's kind of like a trickle-down kindness.
Mm-hmm.
If you treat your manager, if you treat your leadership right, they'll treat the people that are under them right. And that trickles all the way down to the customer. Customer can walk in the store and immediately sense what type of store it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I can walk into a store that may not be the newest remodeled store, but it's clean and I'm welcomed, I'm greeted, I'm treated kindly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back to that store instead of the new flashy one down the street just because of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, to me, it's all about how the customer is treated in the store.
And one of the things that you told me when I was still a sandwich artist just down the road from us is that the customer is the reason for being. Mm-hmm. And I think if people in QSR were able to conceptualize the customer walking through the door as if they were paper checks,
right,
with arms and legs,
yeah,
they would treat them a whole lot differently, because that's exactly what they are.
Yeah, they are.
And I don't think there's nothing wrong with saying that. You are talking to your paycheck.
Exactly. I mean, you are talking to your paycheck.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a hard concept. I mean, we've said this before. You and I have talked about this a lot. Is the job is 80% attitude, and it's 20% skill. You can teach anyone to make a sandwich. You can teach anyone to fold a burrito,
mm-hmm.
to build a Big Mac. You can do any of that stuff,
mm-hmm.
but you can't teach attitude.
Mm-hmm. And so, you've found that to be the case. Full stop.
Full stop.
Have you ever tried to teach attitude?
I've tried to model attitude.
Mm.
So if I can model attitude, if my managers are modeling attitude, if the district managers are modeling attitude,
mm-hmm.
then hopefully your employees say, hey, I'm on the biggest stage of my life. You know, I'm acting.
Right.
You know.
Yes.
I'm
mm-hmm.
acting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are times where, you know, I'd be in the store and I'd be frustrated. I didn't want to talk to a customer,
mm-hmm.
but I'm acting.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And to me, every single manager should be modeling the attitude that they want their employees to see. Yeah. Don't talk negative in front of your employees. Don't say, yeah, I don't like this shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like what corporate is having us do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because then your employee says, well, I don't like what my manager's having me do.
Right. talk more about that acting piece, because I have to share a small anecdote. I had a meeting yesterday, and 2 days ago, and somebody just said to me when we were in the store, they just said, "Hunter, you just know how to talk." And I said, well, a lot of it has come from just simply the mistakes of saying the wrong things, but not particularly in QSR, but in general. And I said, well, one thing that I would encourage you to do, especially if you're a leader listening to this show right now, is get involved in your local Toastmasters, particularly the table topics portion. So if you don't know what Toastmasters is, it's the largest public speaking organization on the planet, and at every Toastmasters meeting, there's a portion of the meeting that's called table topics, and it's purely extemporaneous. It is on the spot public speaking. You don't know what you're going to get asked, but you're going to get asked a random question. You got to develop a speech for that question that has to be at least 60 seconds in length, but no longer than 2.5 minutes. And it's got to be right there on the spot. And if you're able to do that, and then you can transfer that into what you do within your four walls in the QSR space, well, then you're going to approach every linguistic encounter, particularly with the customers, that's what we're talking about right now, differently. You're going to see every chance to, as you said, act and public speak, by definition, because you're in public and you're speaking.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, talk more about that acting piece. Because there is a little bit to it, and there's nothing wrong with that. You have to have a little flair and pizzazz, and because you're delivering that experience.
How would I mean, I know it goes back to the golden rule, and it's trite, but there's so much truth in it, is that treat people like how you want to be treated. And even if, we've all had multiple bad days at work. One of the things that I do, and I've done, is when I pull up to a location, I'll sit in my car for 5 minutes.
Yep.
I will sit in my car for 5 minutes and just deep breath. Okay, even if I have to go in and it's a coaching session or a correcting session, I'm deep breathing, I'm sitting in my mind, how am I going to approach this with kindness? But even if it's just my average day on the job, or I'm going to go in, it's just, I sit there for 5 minutes and put on you like the sports analogies, I put on my game face.
Mm-hmm.
And the game face for QSR industry is different than the game face for football.
Mm-hmm.
So my game face for the QSR industry is, I'm going in there and I'm going to model kindness. I'm going to, every single customer that walks in the door, even when you've got a line of customers out the door, even if you give that person that walks in the door a nod, hey, I got you, I see you,
mm-hmm.
I think that says a lot.
Yeah.
And it is acting.
Mm-hmm.
It's all acting. That's why I center myself for 5 minutes in the car before I go in. It's like, okay, the show must go on, let's go. Even if I just, I came from another location that was stressful or something, I don't want to bring that stress from the other location to this location.
Would you argue, or have you ever considered that potentially it's no longer acting over time if you do it long enough?
Yeah, over time it becomes part of who you are.
Yeah.
But in the beginning it's acting.
Yeah.
But over time it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
I don't think, some great actors or actresses in the world started out that way.
Mm-hmm.
A Denzel didn't start out like a Denzel is today.
Mm-hmm.
A Meryl Streep didn't start out like a Meryl Streep is today.
Yeah.
It became second nature.
Yeah. And the reason why I brought that up is because for those of you who might have been following me for a long time, or some of you don't know me from a hole in the ground, I had a really rough stint in 2021, somewhere in there, and had to go into cognitive behavioral therapy. But a lot of the stuff that we were talking about was the end product of experiences are emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the question that I was asking you, is if you can act or perform in such a way, and then it delivers a great experience, but then that great experience ends in a positive emotion. Well, emotions are chemicals, and if you can expose yourself to those emotions vis-a-vis the end product of positive experiences by virtue of the fact that you acting positively in front of the customer, if you start to bathe in that over time, you're going to start seeking it out.
Exactly.
Right? And then it's going to start becoming who you are.
Second nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes exactly who you are.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I find too sometimes that when I'm in a store, I'm probably a different person sometimes than I am at home. And I'm not saying that I'm a bad person at home or a good person in the store or something, but that, it's like, okay, when I'm in this environment, this is how I'm going to be. Does that make sense at all? Yeah.
Can you extrapolate on that? More than just the acting piece.
Yeah, it's not acting. It's second. Like when I'm at work, and I don't want to say work mode because that's kind of trite. But when I'm at work, this is my goal: to make the person that walks through the door feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere in the QSR industry to buy food.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yes.
Yes. You can go anywhere to buy food.
Yes.
But I want them to have an experience.
Mm-hmm.
So the experience I want them to have may be different than the experience when I'm at a cookout with my family.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. The kindness is the same, but it's different.
You want them to come see David. They just happen to be hungry.
Right. Or come see, I will drive out of my way to go to that location because that is my location. That's my McDonald's, that's my Taco Bell, that's my Subway, that's my whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I will bypass two others to get to my store.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the food's the same.
Yeah.
At all three stores that they bypassed, or two stores that they bypassed to get to your location.
Mm-hmm.
But I came there for Hunter. I came there for, Joe, Jim, Mary, Sarah, David.
Yeah. Sometimes the food might not even be the same.
Right.
you might be out of a particular product, but they don't care.
No.
Because they came there to see you.
They came there to see me.
Yeah.
How many times I know you've experienced it. I've experienced how many times have the professional and the personal life between you and your customer has blurred.
Mm-hmm.
Customers give you presents.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or they come in to share, this happened in my life.
Yep.
It's
cancer just went into remission.
Right, exactly. Because we are their store.
Yep.
We are their people.
Yeah.
And that is something that every industry has to foster.
How do you get it back? Because that's one thing that, even something as simple as greeting the customer within the first 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. You know how rare that is.
It's extremely rare, but it's important. A study was done. They took two lines of people. We talked about this before. Mm-hmm. And they intentionally did not greet the first line and intentionally greeted the second line within 3 to 5 seconds. And then 1 minute in, they went up to the people and asked them, how long have you been waiting in line? The people that weren't greeted, I've been here 10 minutes, I've been here 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. The people that were greeted, and each person, 1 minute, timed by the stopwatch, but it's only been a few seconds, they're busy, I'll get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why greeting is important.
Mm-hmm. Is there any way that if anybody's listening to this podcast how do they implement that into their store, with their crew, rather than simply modeling or telling?
Well, I would say modeling is the number one.
Yeah.
You know, and you identify the employees that have that in them already, and you make sure that you have that type of employee working on every shift.
Yeah.
So you may have the employee that isn't necessarily a great greeter, but they're a great food preparer. But they're not a great greeter. You need both of those types of people.
Yeah.
So you have the great greeter and the great food preparer working together. And then eventually it gets modeled and modeled and modeled.
Yeah.
You know?
You'd almost think that you'd almost want to have it staged a little bit too, because how do I say this? You want the serotonin, serotonin is the immediate gratification, right? But then you also want the dopaminergic effect of it, as far as like, see, this is the compounding over time with that individual, that sandwich artist, that crew member, whatever it might be. Like, see, this is actually really helping your career, just simply greeting that person every single day now. But so I say, like, you almost want it to be staged so that when the first time they do it, they experience the benefit of it right there. It's almost like getting it staged in some way, right? Having a secret shopper perhaps come in and then just be like, hey, you're doing a great job. Are you the manager here? I've never experienced customer service. So then you're like, oh, yeah, there's something to what David just told me. It just worked, sort of thing.
Well, one of the things that we used to do, and it's not about, we used to walk around with a handful of quarters in our pocket. The minute we witnessed something positive, like greeting a customer in 5 seconds, I just held the quarter out, put it in the person's hand and said, I just noticed you doing that. It's not about the quarter. It's about the recognition.
Yeah.
The quarter in the hand is just the reminder of the recognition.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had employees say, David didn't notice me doing this, and he was in the store and he didn't notice me doing this, and I didn't get my quarter. You know?
Yeah.
So it wasn't about the quarter, it was about the recognition.
Yeah.
You know, so rewarding immediately on the spot, and it's not necessarily about how much the money is, as it is about the recognition.
People will work for a paycheck, but they'll die for recognition.
Exactly. I love that saying.
Yeah.
And but it's about rewarding that, you know, and make a big deal about it. You know, compliment in public, correct in private.
Yeah.
You know, so if I notice someone did something great, you know, I will say it out loud in front of, you just made the best looking sandwich I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, and I say it loud enough so all the other sandwich artists can hear it. You know, or here's your quarter, great job. Yeah. You know, it's like you said, it's about the recognition.
So let's segue then, because you said, I mean, that's the best looking sandwich I've ever seen. So then let's segue then into, if you're not going to be upset, or if you're not going to be obsessed about the customer, then you better be obsessed about one of the other ones, that would be the basics, which is the product or cooking. Would you agree with that or no?
Oh no, yeah. I mean, those you know, the product.
Yeah.
Cooking. Before, you know, if we want to tie it into the 3 C's, the product, cleanliness, and customer service.
Yeah. So then, if we've talked about the customer, how do you get them obsessed or bought into what it is that you're actually selling, which is the product that's going out the door, the cooking piece?
The product has to be great. The product, you know, all franchises have a formula. You got to follow the formula. Millions of dollars are spent yearly by all QSR franchises to get that formula right. You know, how many products are put before, you know, test subjects and that to get the formula right. But if I walk into any QSR restaurant, and that's one of the things that's nice about QSR, that's nice about franchises, I know that this sandwich is going to taste exactly like the sandwich I had in Atlanta, Georgia last week. And that's important.
Yeah.
So getting, and that's all training. You know, and it's just driving that home about the importance of, you want this sandwich to taste, we've spent millions of dollars on developing this product.
Mm-hmm.
And we've spent millions of dollars in test markets. And so that's the importance of following that recipe, if you will.
Yeah, the training, the coaching piece, doing it early. Because if somebody isn't trained, they're not going to get bought, and they're not going to look at
Right.
I don't know, people don't really care about me, they're not investing in time and energy into me, and sort of things like that. So I think that part's definitely important, but then
It's the reinforcing though too, Hunter. I mean, your wife's a teacher.
yeah.
My dad was a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Said, how many times, we learn by repetition
Mm-hmm.
and reinforcement and repetition and reinforcement. So you can't just say, I trained this employee last week, check, on how to make this sandwich, check. And I never go back and revisit it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One thing that's I'm trying to think about this more, David, is because this is something that's sprung onto me a little bit later than earlier, and the cooking piece I really have become obsessed with.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end of my stint with Subway, as a senior DM, and you're managing particularly numbers and just a few number of reports, never really on the line. But man, when I could hop on the line again, like, oh yes, please, let's just 6 slices of ham, pepperoni, and salami. You got a BMT. I'm gonna make it the best damn BMT you ever made.
Sure.
I'm gonna shut my mind off. Just make food and take care of this person across from me. That follows me home now.
Yep.
As well. I love making food for people. It's just such a way that we can connect and things like that. And that I never had that.
No.
No. I mean, food for me was very
It
much.
was nutrition and calories.
Yeah,
and,
it was a means to an end.
It was fuel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I'm getting more. There's more experimentation happening. It's like, well, take the other night for the example. I was making potatoes, and I wasn't just going to do a baked potato in the oven, which is what I typically did. Like, no, I'm going to go out, I'm going to get some baby red skin potatoes, and I'm going to cut them in halves. I'm going to toss them in olive oil and pink salt and black pepper. And when I lay them on the sheet in the oven, I'm going to make sure that one side of them is face down, and but one side of them is face up, so you can have that contrast between the sear and the unseared fleshy side, so you can kind of have that in that mouth pleasure, for lack of a better word, and experience that. So he said that's followed me home now, right?
Oh yeah, I love cooking. I love cooking.
And now being in the concept where you actually cook food, it's so much fun to make. But then going back to what you said about the millions of dollars and things like that. The one thing that really has impressed me thus far with this particular concept, Taco Bell, is it's the same 5 ingredients for all their products.
Yeah.
So you got a tortilla, you got beef, you got beans, you got cheese, and then you got lettuce and tomatoes.
Yeah.
Sour cream if it's supreme. But that's it. That's the same 5 or 6 ingredients for everything.
Right.
Whether it's a beefy 5-layer, a gordita crunch, a chili cheese burrito, a stacker, it's all the same things. But it's the way that they're presenting it through the process of the cooking, right?
Right.
And it's, man, how do we as leaders and people listening to this show get their people to buy into that? How do they do that besides the training piece? Because at some point it's got to click for them, right? Or there's only so many analogies and metaphors and things like that where they can really like, oh wow, no, I'm preparing somebody's food.
Right. Constantly go back to repetition, the teaching. But would you eat that? I've asked that question a lot. Would you eat that? And it's not about, oh, I don't like spicy food, so I wouldn't eat that, or I can't eat, I have dietary restrictions, I don't eat pork, or whatever.
Yeah.
But take that out of the picture and look at that sandwich. Would you eat that?
Mm-hmm.
I ask that question a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Would you eat that?
Mm-hmm.
Would you really eat that?
Because one thing that you've always said to me is we eat with our eyes.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm. So not only does it taste good, it's got to look good before you taste it.
It's got to look.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta look good.
I mean, I don't think it's by mistake that Subway in particular calls them sandwich artists.
Right. Or, yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the most important person in the QSR industry is that customer-facing employee.
Yeah.
That is the most important person in the
Yeah,
QSR.
yeah, and that's I'm so glad you said that. That's actually a shift that Taco Bell is making. So would the manager or the MIC, manager in charge
Okay.
for that shift,
Yeah.
they're very much more front counter focused.
Yeah.
Because they want to put the person in charge in front of
Oh,
the
yeah.
customer, delivering that experience.
You know, I can sit in my White Castle in the sky,
Mm-hmm.
no pun intended,
Yeah.
and never once see a customer.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not good for my business. I am less valuable than that person that's every day making a sandwich, making the food for the person. It's
Mm-hmm.
having that face-to-face with that person. The higher up I go, the less valuable I become in terms of customer focus.
Yeah.
And I have to keep that in my head at all times.
Mm-hmm.
How does this decision that I'm going to make impact the customer focus? If we bring this product in, how is that going to impact the customer focus? If I put a policy in place, how does that impact that customer focus?
Mm-hmm.
I think that has to be part of the decision-making process of every leader.
Mm-hmm.
Is how does this impact customer focus? And by that I mean the employee on the front line that's right there in front of the customer space.
Mm-hmm.
How does this impact their relationship with the customer?
So then, this word gets overused so much that it's lost its meaning. But how do you incentivize the employee to care about that the food that they're giving to the customer, to deliver that experience, to get them coming back? Because I have my thoughts on it, but I want to hear yours first.
So my thoughts first are in the hiring process. Like I said, 80-20. You know,
Yeah. So can I?
80%, yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that I put in place before I left Subway was a new people process, and it was a three-step interview process, and all of the questions leading up to that final interview with the district manager. Yep, it was. They had to go through a three-step interview process, and it was either Alicia, Celine, or Mary who made that final judgment as far as if this person is going to work in one of our stores. And the first question, the final interview, was a question that I stole from your playbook, which is, what exactly is it that you think we do here?
What do we do here? Right.
And if their answer was make sandwiches, nope.
No.
Nope. Because that's the last thing we do here, right?
Exactly.
Even though we're talking about cooking right now, that's the last thing that we do here. And the questions were set up in such a way that we were psychologically conditioning the candidate to believe that there was no questions on there about food.
Right.
It was very much all about the customer. It was very much all about the experience in cleanliness and things of that nature. So,
well, one of the things I always did, and one of my go-to interview questions was, instead of asking someone is, what's your definition of good customer service? Because they'll tell me what I want to hear. They will, tell me. I would say, think of some place that you've been.
mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be a restaurant, can be anywhere.
Yeah.
Grocery store, movie theater, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Where you got great customer service.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it good? What made it good to you?
Yeah.
You know, and by what they answer, I can tell what their definition of good customer service is.
Mm-hmm.
So if they say, it was really good, I got in and out really quick, the people, there was no BS or anything, it was just boom, boom, boom. That person's definition of good customer service is quick, quick, quick.
Mm-hmm.
Next person, they say that, it was great, I went in there, they took their time with me, talked, we just chatted. so that person's definition is conversation, relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Both types of people's definition of customer service is important.
Yeah.
You know, you need the person that's gonna be quick, but they not necessarily engage in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You also need that conversational piece so that you turn your store into, this is my store and I'll drive past 3 others to come here. But you need both types of those employees.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a store with all quicks, and you can't have a store with all chatty Cathys.
I had a meeting yesterday, and we were talking about that piece of it, the customer piece, and we were talking about incentivizing and things like that. And I said, I think that we're being too myopic as leaders when it comes to our people who are truly the front line of the sales force.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, we need to figure out what they want. Not what they want tomorrow, what they want 10 years from now, what they want next year, what they want 5 years from now. What is it that you want? For me, it was when I first came to one of your stores, I wanted to be a published author.
Right.
I wanted to be a professional athlete. I didn't know that Subway was a vehicle for me to get there.
Right.
And it was.
Yeah.
Published author, check. They can't see it, but there's my football helmet on the fridge over there, check.
Yeah.
Did all those things while I was still with Subway. So if we can identify what it is that an individual wants, period, in life, and then we can begin to use stories, like you said, of, hey, you might actually be in the perfect vehicle to get you there, and you might not even know it.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've had employees that have gone on to. I had an employee that's now, you know, an immigration lawyer. I've had an employee that's, you know, president of a company, not a QSR industry. You know, but
it teaches you everything you need to know about everything in life,
exactly.
This industry.
But we also have to recognize as leaders, and especially as franchisees, that not everybody we hire is going to share our passion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like my passion was building my business.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay that if every single one of your employees don't have that same passion. You know, do they have passion? You know, this is an employee that comes in, is reliable, dependable, does a great job, but they don't necessarily share my passion of, I want to build this from 1 store to 5 stores to 10 stores to whatever.
And
that's okay.
And that's fine. But that's why I said, I think in order to get in the door, you got to be obsessed with at least one of the 6.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if they want to be at your level, well, then it's got to be all 3.
Right.
Because then it turns into a career.
But it is okay as a franchise. You know, it's like, you know, I've talked to franchisees before, and it's like, oh, they don't have the same desire for us to build the business. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's your passion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you're not going to find, you know, 100 employees, 500 employees, however employees you need in your network that have the exact same passion as you. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
they don't need to share that passion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can share your goal.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to share your passion.
So passion being somewhat synonymous with what somebody wants, because the question is obviously then, well, Hunter, what if my team, my employee, my crew, there's somebody on there, the entire crew says, well, I don't know what I want. Well, then your theory of tying what they want to the vehicle that they're in now to help them get there, that doesn't work. So what if somebody on my team doesn't know what it is that they want? You invert it, in my opinion. You invert it. Because if somebody doesn't know what they want, that's fine. They probably know what they don't want.
Right.
They probably know what they want to stay the hell away from, which could be anything.
Right.
It could be anything. And so then, okay, well, you're in a really good vehicle to get the hell away from that.
Mm-hmm.
To get the hell away from your domestic issues.
Exactly. But, you know,
Poverty issues.
whatever. Or
Yeah.
it's, even if it's, we're hiring in the QSR industry, the demographic of our employees, the age is lower.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, it's first time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
We spend a lot of time teaching our employees just what it means to have a job.
Yep.
But, for some of them it may be, I needed to get a job to pay the insurance on my car. Or, I needed to get a job so I have extra spending money for this or that or the other thing. That's okay. What their rationale for the job was, isn't going to be, I wanted to get a job so that I can become a franchisee.
But if you understand story, you know that people buy solutions to internal problems, not external ones. Because what you just said there is...
Sure.
What did you say? You said, I wanted to... What did you say? Have enough money to save for a car? What did you say?
Buy the insurance on my car or whatever.
Yeah. So that's the external. What they're
Right.
really after is the peace of mind.
Right.
Right? And so I think the more you know about story, then the more that you can really bring somebody along and invite them into what it is that you're doing there. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but
Is it not? Is that too romantic?
A little bit, I think, but it's not. Sometimes, there are employees that are going to come in that you're going to learn their story and help them through that.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times, the employees are just there to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's nothing.
See, I disagree with that, and I know it's probably my age.
Yeah.
But that piece of it is just like then you have not endured enough adversity.
No,
if you're just showing up for a paycheck, brother, then it's like I'm telling you, like
yeah.
life is gonna show up, and then this job's gonna be way different.
But I'm thinking, a lot of the, this is my first job, people.
Yeah.
One, there's pride in getting your first job.
Mm-hmm.
How many people have you hired? It's their first job, and then, on their first week, mom and dad got to come in and see them, and they're gonna order a sandwich, and there's the familial kind of pride in this is Jimmy's first job, and then that fun.
Mm.
But I think especially for the first time, first job people, it is a little bit about the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of there's nothing wrong with having employees that work for you, that the reason they work for you is because they need the money.
Mm-hmm. I needed the money when I came to work for you.
One of the things my business partner and I, he took a tremendous amount of pride in was not necessarily in how many people went on to bigger and better things, but in, he would, David, what number is this one? When we would onboard a new employee.
Yes.
This is number 2011. This is 2012. This is he always took great pride in saying, I have employed 2012 people. I have employed 2015 people.
Yeah.
He took a tremendous amount of pride in how many people he was able to in his community employ.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a rewarding thing in and of itself, above and beyond the money.
Yeah. Let's talk about the cleanliness piece. Would you consider that to be a basic or no? And you don't have to agree.
Yes, it's a basic. It's a big basic.
Yeah.
That goes back to the I think I shared that story with you, that psychological thing they did with the airline, where they had two jets, both identical mechanically, both the same type 747s. I don't know what they were. One of the jets, they did not clean it, didn't wipe down the tray tables, bathrooms were dirty, they didn't clean it after, peanut wrappers on the floor, those kind of things, and the other plane was spotless.
Mm-hmm.
They took a load of passengers, both of them went to the same place, pretty much the same weather, turbulence, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The people on the dirty plane, when they got off the plane, they questioned them, how was your flight? It's the worst flight I've ever been on. I thought we were going to crash. I was praying the whole way. I could have swore this is the absolutely worst flight I was on.
Mm-hmm.
People that were on the clean plane, it was a normal flight, it was great, just no problems, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The flights were pretty much identical. The weather was pretty much identical. The only difference was a dirty plane versus a clean plane.
So then the question becomes, how do you get people to be clean?
Would you want to eat in that place?
Mm-hmm.
Would you yourself want to eat here?
Well, and then the negative ripple effect that happens as a result of that. I'll tell you right now, it's gonna be a long time, and I'm sorry if you run one of these concepts, it'll be a long time before I go to Chipotle again.
Yeah.
I went to one, and it was an absolute train wreck in there, and line out the door, regardless. But an absolute David. I mean,
train wreck in terms of cleanliness, because
yes.
that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
So,
yes. I mean, straw wrappers on the tables,
yeah.
and no chairs were pushed in. Rice. I mean, it looked like a Texas Roadhouse, but instead of peanut shells, there were rice all over the floor. I mean, it's obviously being in the industry, we have eyes for that sort of thing, but it's just like, holy cow, you guys just, I mean, it literally just, when, no better way to just say,
yeah.
within a customer when they walk in.
And that's the problem. I mean, sometimes I say what's good about a franchise is what's bad about a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
With a franchise, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to. Just follow the guidebook. Smarter people than me have developed this guidebook. I can follow it.
That's the intra versus intrapreneur thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the bad thing is that as my customer, this store is mine. The store 3 miles away, I have nothing to do with.
Yeah.
But they associate both stores
with the brand.
The brand.
Yeah.
So they go have a bad experience at this store. They're never coming to my store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, we've all done that, and
so just have 100% market share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or as a good owner, you talk with your representatives from the corporation and say, this is really hurting me. It's
Mm-hmm.
hurting my business.
Mm-hmm.
But so tricks that I've used. One, the question. I've asked the good question, good customer service. Someplace where you've been where we've had bad customer service.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it bad? They were rude. They were this. The store was nasty.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken the same thing, but this time I used dollar bills and I would hide them in the store. Put them behind the toilet.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Keep going.
And wait and see how long before someone found that dollar bill. I would know how long it was before someone cleaned behind that toilet.
Mm.
Or I, hide one under the sandwich unit. Say how long, oh, I found $1 here. Well, I put it there 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that means in 3 weeks, you're the first person to look there and clean that area.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the employees knew that. I mean, I didn't hide that I did it.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, manager, I put $1 bill somewhere in your store. Let's see how long before it's found.
That was gonna be my next question. Yeah, as far as did somebody know?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Preemptively.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you would tell the manager, and then.
Yeah. They could tell the employees.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care about that. It was like, how long did it take before that got clean? And if it was it just reinforces the cleaning.
Mm-hmm. I tend to wax too philosophical when it comes to that sort of thing, because I need to get more practical when it comes to that sort of thing, because for the cleanliness piece, for me, how it lateralizes to other areas in your life in terms of just being disciplined to start with. I mean, Jordan Peterson talks about it all the time. I think it's actually one of his 12 rules in his book, 12 Rules for Life, is clean your room.
Make your bed.
Yeah, make your bed, clean your room, because this space that we're doing it in here right now, this place was a dump 3 weeks ago.
Well, I wouldn't say a dump.
The garage that we're in right now
Right.
was stacked up higher than I
Lots of boxes,
in cardboard stuff, right? So,
But not a dump, you know.
I always tend to go right there with the crew and with the manager and some of the stories. It's like, man, if you only knew what this could do for your life,
Right.
if you just started taking the cleanliness more seriously, then it would carry over to your home. And then if you start living in a more beautiful home, you'd start living in a more beautiful store. And if you live in a more beautiful store, then it's going to increase your sales, and then what's that going to do for your life and all of these things. But that's also who you're becoming at that, which is really what it's about, more so than the money, because we talk about the internal problem more than the external.
Right.
The cleanliness piece just pays so many dividends.
But cleanliness, and this drives home the point, cleanliness is subjective. So I just said to you, it wasn't a dump. You said it was a dump.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's subjective.
Mm-hmm.
So my idea of cleanliness and your idea of cleanliness may be two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Your employee's idea of cleanliness and the manager's idea of cleanliness are two different things.
Yeah.
They have to be shown what you mean by cleanliness.
Mm-hmm.
I wiped that table off.
Mm-hmm.
It's clean, I wiped it off. And then you come in, the manager comes in.
It's filthy.
It's filthy.
Yeah.
In your mind it's filthy, in their mind it's clean.
Yeah.
You have to show them what you mean by clean. What is, and clean sounds subjective. Clean sounds like it's subjective, but it is objective. You do have a definition of what clean means.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had stores that I've gone into that I thought were trashy.
Mm-hmm.
And the manager or the employees thought they were great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then I have to tell them, this is what I mean by clean.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just saying, clean your store.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, because clean is subjective.
Mm-hmm. So we've touched on customer, we've touched on the cooking piece or the product, we've touched on cleanliness now. We talked about building with the basics, getting better. I forget what exactly we did, what we talked about in the beginning. Somebody's listening to this, what else can they start doing to run a better week, run a better Wednesday to Tuesday in their location?
Run a better Wednesday to Tuesday, to me, everything is how you treat your employees. It all boils down to that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, we're going to have employees that we have to correct, coach, train, discipline, whatever word you want to use in there.
Yeah.
You have employees that you are going to have to terminate. You know, you're not terminating them because they're a bad person. You're terminating them because they're just not right for this job. What is your saying that I love so much that I started adopting? You're not in the right seat.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not saying, you know, this isn't the right seat for you. You know, you need to find a different seat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, QSR may not be your industry.
Yeah.
Because
the product is the product. The people love Subway, people love Taco Bell, people love Chick-fil-A. They're gonna keep coming.
Right.
So, but if you're in this space, then by virtue of the fact that it's a franchise or it's a big corporation, most of the people listening to this show are probably entrepreneurs.
Correct.
Right? And then so there's a distinction there that maybe we need to talk about. So an entrepreneur is somebody who builds something, it's a new concept, right? Taco John's was a new concept, right?
Right.
Taco Bell is a different concept, right. But when you come in, you're not doing anything that's new. Yeah. So that would make, but you are going to get in there and you're going to try and hopefully, hope isn't a strategy, but you would make things better. And so then you're not an entrepreneur, you're an intrapreneur. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you just have to know that. And once you know that, you got a good product. People are going to come. You just got to do the basics and do them at an incredibly high level. There was Colin Powell's, I think he had 13 rules, but one of them, which was my favorite, number 8, check small things.
Yeah. But like you said, intrapreneur versus entrepreneur. All franchisees are entrepreneurs. Subway example, Fred DeLuca, Dr. Peter Buck, they were the entrepreneurs.
Yep. Yes.
You know,
They built it.
McDonald's, the McDonald brothers, Ray Kroc, they were the entrepreneurs. Probably Ray Kroc more than the McDonald brothers, but Ray Kroc was the entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone,
Glenn Bell, Taco Bell.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're the entrepreneurs. Franchisees are entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to reinvent a sandwich or, the process for making a hamburger quick.
Yeah.
But
you can make things better.
You can make them
You can
better.
make things better. We're at Taco Bell. We're starting to with our franchise. We're starting to, given my background with you, and the meeting I just had yesterday. It's like, well, how do we start talking about catering?
Exactly.
Right. So that's how you make things better.
Right.
Like that. Right.
So an entrepreneur comes in, and all franchisees are entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
How can I make my operation a little better?
Mm-hmm.
Suggestions to corporate, whatever they are.
Mm-hmm.
How can I make it better? I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think a lot of franchisees buy franchisees and then think they have to reinvent the wheel.
But then it goes back to your point, which is how they treat their employees.
Exactly.
Because especially in QSR, you're an entrepreneur, you're not building a business. You're building people.
Exactly. So if we say QSR restaurant is all about people,
mm-hmm.
it is a people business.
Yeah.
It's not, it's, and we say the customer is our people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the employee is our people too.
Yeah.
There are, almost in a way that the employee is the leadership,
mm-hmm.
The leadership customer.
Yeah.
So am I going to treat that employee like crap?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to treat the customer like crap.
It's so backwards in a lot of ways. In some concepts, with all of the bonuses and things like that being focused so much on the manager, it's like, well, the manager is only there 40 hours a week,
mm-hmm.
and if you're open 91 hours a week, well, they're there less than half the time they're open. What are we doing about the frontline people?
And I don't mean by treating your customers good as, I give them a free top. They get to have free drinks. That's not.
You talk about you said customers, but you meant employees.
Employees. The employees are my customer.
Yeah. James Sullivan, the gentleman who wrote the book Fundamentals, and then also Multi-Unit Leadership.
Oh.
You want that book?
Yeah, multi-unit. That was one I haven't read. I want to read Multi-Unit Leadership.
But one thing he said in there is, if customers are first, employees are more first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been posting a lot on my LinkedIn page. Look it up. About.
I've been teaching him.
But yeah, Hunter's helped me. Gravitate or.
Yeah. You got 37 years.
Navigate LinkedIn, but it's like I have been posting books that have helped me.
Yeah.
This is one of them, by the way.
Yeah.
But I have been posting books. Even I just posted. What was the one I just posted? How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie. Book is 89 years old. 1934, I think, is the first published date.
Mm.
That book is as relevant today as it was when it first came out.
Probably
more
so. We've lost it.
Yeah.
Because of the digital age that we're in.
Exactly.
And so then when you provide that, the people piece.
Right.
They're blown away.
Yeah.
It's like, well, jeez.
So if we keep saying we're in the people business,
mm-hmm.
if we're in the people business, it's all the people.
Yeah. Then we need to, as you said, to tie this up, start acting like it.
Yeah. Model it, and by model it, I mean act it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, we talked a lot about the basics: customer,
cleanliness,
if to inject another C in there, crew, or employees, people, the cooking piece, the cleanliness piece.
But you can say customer for your employee because the employee is the leadership's customer.
The employee is the leadership's customer.
Goes back to my philosophy.
The employee is the leader's customer.
Yeah. It goes back to my philosophy about the most important person.
Yeah,
right?
I like that. Yeah, that was.
Who's the most important person in the store to a regional manager. It is the manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then the most important person in the store to the manager is the employee.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important person to the employee is the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Because if my employees are treated right,
Mm-hmm.
my customers are treated right.
Yeah. You mentioned one thing. You said that we're not here for free pop and things like that. So then what is it? So then because we kind of now we're kind of getting a little bit circular here, but identifying what is it that they want, what they want to stay away from.
One of the things you talked about, recognition.
Yeah.
Mutual respect. You know, you are not just a number. You are not just, if you leave, there's 10 more out there like you, I can find.
Mm-hmm.
Never treat them like they're not valuable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I talk to employees, when I talk to managers, when I talk to senior managers, I spend a lot of time talking personally.
Mm-hmm.
I probably talk to them more about their personal life or their personal things than I do about the company.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, tell me about your wife. How's she doing?
Mm-hmm.
How are your kids? You know.
And people's bullshit detectors are very good. They'll know if it's.
Well, and I mean, I'm truly interested.
Yeah.
I am truly interested
Mm-hmm.
in your life.
One thing I tell my son Sam about is because he asked me the other day. He said, "Dad, how do you sell something?" And I said, "You know, honey, the thing about it is, if you want to be the most interesting person in the room, be the most interested."
Yeah.
That's it. Then you can sell anybody anything. Right?
Oh yeah.
Whether it's an Italian BMT or a beefy 5-layer burrito.
I mean, I still have employees, and you're not a good franchisee if you don't.
Mm-hmm. If you don't what?
If you don't have employees that worked for you 20 years ago that are still reaching out to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're not reaching out, you know, some of them are reaching out to me for career advice. Some of them are reaching out to me for personal advice. Some of them are just saying, hey, how you doing? You know, I get invited to a lot of things in the, you know, yeah, and it can be difficult, it can be painful when you get close to these people.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do something that hurts you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yes.
But you can't let that stop you from being radically kind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kindness is not transactional.
Yeah. So how do you navigate that?
So kindness is not transactional.
No, the other piece, in terms of. Go back. What you said before.
Sure.
Before that, what'd you say?
That you're going to get hurt. That. Still be invested in everybody's lives.
Yeah.
How do I navigate that?
Yeah. How do you navigate that? Because that's sort of a. It's not like an HR problem. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's. How much do you pour into people? Or is it just one of those things where it's you do it because you're a good person, and if it bites in the ass, well,
It does, and you know,
so be it.
dust off your feet.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard,
Mm-hmm.
it's painful,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
but the ones that you don't get hurt by,
Mm-hmm.
that reward is greater.
Mm-hmm.
That reward is so much greater.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, you and I were talking about it. I got invited to a wedding last week
Yeah.
from an employee that hasn't worked for us in a while. You know, I got a letter from an employee that I haven't seen in 15, 20 years. Hey, David, just touching base with you. I thought you'd like to know. I'm a lawyer. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. You know,
Mhm.
just those rewards outshine
Mm-hmm.
the hurt.
Yeah.
You know?
One last thing, and then we'll wrap this up. I was having a conversation with one of our staff yesterday, and this particular individual is so incredibly passionate about what she does. Yeah. But she's so passionate, and she wants everybody else to be where she's at, that her passion can come off like poison
Yeah.
for everybody else.
Yeah.
And there's people that are like that, and then on the other end of the spectrum, there's people who are more worried about being liked than respected.
So
they want to be their buddies or their boss. So and I'm sure that just resonated with a lot of people listening to this podcast, because there's how many managers out there across a multitude of concepts are too worried about being somebody's buddy than being their boss. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who are so passionate that it feels and is received like poison to the rest of the staff. Because somewhere in between, there's a fantastic, prototypical leader.
Right. I don't know if this is the right place for this, but
It is.
I think we make the mistake as leaders, and you hear this thrown around a lot, is that we are like a family. We're not. We're a team. We're not a family. I don't want, and I say that with a lot of heart, is that we choose our teams, we don't choose our family. This is a team. I don't want all the family drama that you have in a family. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there is a lot of truth to the saying, and I know it's trite, and I know it's horrible, but one bad apple does spoil the whole bunch. And so if you've got a great team of people, and there's one bad, get rid of the bad.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're going to have a bad team.
You risk losing the faith and trust of everybody else if you're choosing to keep this person.
Right. But you can get rid of them compassionately.
Or if you're a larger franchisee like you were, maybe they're in the wrong seat, and maybe that seat is the wrong store.
Exactly.
Just transfer them.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but we've been going on for a little bit over an hour now. Is there anything else you want to leave them? We talk about basics. A lot about people.
I like the basics.
Yeah.
I think future ones we can get more into the nitty gritty of P&Ls and all of that good stuff. But you can't have a great P&L. You can't have anything else, any of the numbers, without the basics.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, you literally will be working Wednesday to Tuesday, no break.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and no franchisee wants to get into to purchase a franchisee just to purchase themselves a job.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes franchisees purchase themselves a job.
Yes.
But check us out, like, subscribe, hit the bell. Check this book out. Check out our LinkedIn pages. Thanks for listening to us BS. And if you like more, let us know. Send us some messages.
Yes, please. Thank you for that. Yeah, give us some topics to talk about.
Give us some topics. We'll talk about it. A lot of experience here coming at you, both from someone getting into the industry and someone who's been in the industry a long time. And, we've got some stories.
More.
We have some stories.
Plenty. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.